Hey, everybody. We're back for another Tyche Talk Tuesday. It's Tuesday, right? Yeah, it's Tuesday. Never keep track of what day it is. They all blur together. But I'm super excited for our guest today. I know I say that every week, but I am particularly excited about this guest because she's a dear friend and a fabulous woman. And she's going to talk to us all about her unconventional journey in law and her, like, she's been through so many different things career wise that I'm sure there's a story that will resonate with you that you've been through that you have questions about. So if you have questions, be sure to put them in the comments and I'll answer them as we go along. And so let's jump right on in. So our guest today is Leigh Archer. She's a strategic human resources professional with a background in employment law and employee relations. She worked in the public sector for 13 years and is currently a director with Fahrenheit Advisors, where she advises clients from different industries, ensuring that their PR programs align with their overall strategic goals and providing recommendations to mitigate and avoid risk. In addition to her Virginia bar license, Leigh has certifications in human resources management and DEI. So welcome to Tyche Talk, Leigh.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. So let's jump right in. So did you navigate? Okay, so tell us a little backstory, a little bit. To give some context, Leigh has been a stay-at-home mom. She's gone back to the workforce. She's done all of the things. Would you rather just kind of give like a brief synopsis and then we kind of do a deep dive into it?
Sure. It's funny because in job interviews, when they always say, tell us a little bit about your background, what brings you here, um, that should be the softball question, right? But for
Never
me,
is.
no. And it frustrates me because I'm like, how much time do we have? Because for me, it's not the softball question. It's actually kind of complicated and it's not an easy answer. And it's been a bit of a winding road that brought me here. And a lot of people come out of school with, yes, this is what I've always wanted to do. This is what I've prepared myself for my entire career. And for me, I'd have to go back to, well, there was this boy I liked my senior year of college, because a lot of great stories start that way, right? Um,
Yes.
and really, that is kind of part of my story, but obviously that's not at the forefront, and I'm not going to focus on that. But I'll just say some life circumstances. Um, but long story short, yada yada yada, whatever. I ended up with the decision after college to go to law school. But in that, there was a year in between college and law school, and I ended up working in a law firm.
Wow.
Um, and I was assigned to help an attorney who was working on a very complex securities fraud case. And you can imagine how entertaining and exciting that was. Um, and actually, there were some exciting things about that. If you're an attorney in Virginia, it's interesting to know that the judge on that case was Judge Marriage, who is a hero for civil rights. So a lot of people know Judge Marriage. And so that was exciting. I did not realize necessarily at the time how exciting it was to have that opportunity. But the lawyer that I was supporting was also a labor and employment lawyer. So that was my first exposure to labor and employment law. And I will say in job interviews, I don't spend this much time talking about it, but I did get to
Oh, wait. I
exposure.
forgot to click the go live one, so we're gonna do it again.
Okay.
I just realized that my Dana just told me she was like, "Is it live?"
So are we
Okay,
going all the way back to the beginning?
we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning because it wasn't live at all. So it's just been recording. It's just for my own private recording, I guess. So we're gonna go back to the beginning, and so I'm gonna say, she went to college, law school, and then I'll have you pick up after that because that was kind of a long intro. So here we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. So we, as usual, have some tech issues, but we're live now. So I'm very excited. Oh, welcome to Tyche Talk, my bi-weekly talk show, if you will. It's a live stream on LinkedIn where I talk to amazing women about different things. And I'm so excited to have um, the first guest of what I've just decided to call my career journey series. She didn't know that. I just, thinking on the fly.
Nice. I
So,
like it.
yeah, she's the debut of the careers journey. So today we're going to be talking to Leigh Archer, who, as the title says, has taken an unconventional journey through law into HR, and she's going to tell us about her story. And I'm sure some of you are going to be able to resonate with some of it. It's great stories. So let me take a moment to introduce myself. I'm Lauren Young Durbin. I'm a career clarity coach. Tyche coaching is my coaching practice. And today we have Leigh Archer, who is a strategic human resources professional with a background in employment law and employee relations. She worked in the public sector for 13 years and is currently a director of Fahrenheit Advisors, where she advises clients on different industries, ensuring that their HR programs align with their overall strategic goals and providing recommendations to mitigate or avoid risk. In addition to her Virginia bar license, Leigh has certifications in HR management and DEI. So please give a great Tyche welcome to Leigh Archer, who's awesome and also a personal friend. So I'm particularly excited about this. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have Leigh on is, like I said, it's an unconventional journey. A lot of times, like the regular ways you go to uh, undergrad, law school, you start practicing, and you just kind of practice till you don't practice no more. Well, Leigh took a different path to that. So she, to say the least, she went to college, took some time off, went work with an attorney, and then she decided to go to law school after getting real life experience. This is something I always recommend people to do. So I'm going to have Leigh take it away and tell us about once you got through law school, what then? What happened then? Why is your journey unconventional?
Sure. So I guess just it's funny because in job interviews, they always start with, tell us a little bit about your background. How did you get here? And that is supposed to be the softball question, right? Everyone is supposed to say, oh, here's my journey. It's been great. And that's supposed to loosen them up for the rest of the interview. But for me, that is the hardest question to answer because, well, first of all, that's supposed to be a quick, short answer. For me, I'm like, how much time do we have? Because I never know how far back to go because it's a bit of a winding road that got me there. And just a little bit of background before I went to law school, the attorney, I worked in a law firm and the attorney that I was supporting was a labor and employment lawyer. And so I knew going into law school, that was the area of law that I loved. Other areas of law were interesting for sure, and when you go to law school, for the lawyers and the audience who are watching, certainly different areas of law kind of pique your interest, but labor and employment law in particular for me, I think just the stories. I'm really interested in storytelling, and so the stories of people's lives really resonate with me and how that motivates behavior. And then just in the workplace, we spend a lot of time at work. I don't know if y'all have noticed, we're at work a lot. And so I think how your workplaces impact you personally and professionally really mattered to me, both from the employer perspective and the employee perspective. And so I knew that was the area of law where I wanted to focus. But of course, when you graduate law school, you don't get to handpick necessarily your practice area.
I didn't.
Um, yeah. And that was a little disappointing to me as I was going through the interview process. And I found that interview process grueling, demoralizing, dehumanizing. I
Yeah.
didn't like, and by the way, I was a really good law student. I had the grades, I was on the law review. Um, and I did everything you were supposed to do in law school to do well in the interviews. I still found it really difficult. I was a horrible interviewer. I hadn't yet learned the art of kind of selling yourself.
Right.
And so I ended up working for a state agency straight out of law school. But what I loved about it was the focus on labor and employment law. It was the state agency that was the gatekeeper to the state's grievance procedure. So, you know, in state government, you have a bit of a property interest in your employment. So you cannot be terminated without, or even, you know, disciplined without having grievance rights. And so it was administrative law where or really about 50% of it was administrative law. The other half was HR advisory. So I got to consult with both managers and employees on different aspects of employment law and how that impacted their role in the workplace, which I look back on that now and I think that's kind of crazy that I was straight out of law school and giving this wisdom. I had no wisdom to give. I was 25 years old, I think, had never really
Oh,
held
Lord.
a
Yeah,
real
license.
job. I did have the license. Um, but you know, and I did that for about 3 years. And then I retired. I retired to raise a family. And so, like you said, I've done a little bit of everything. So I was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years. And
Wow.
for those 7 years, I watched my then husband's career grow, where he was successful in his field. I watched my law school classmates go on and make partners in their firms, and I was very happy for them. I hadn't taken that path, but I was fine with it. And then at some point, 7 years in, the decision in my house was, hey, maybe it's time for you to go back to work. Wasn't really quite the timing I had expected, but it was 2009-ish. So if you all remember, there was a recession going on. Wasn't a
Yeah.
great market for attorneys, and the firms, especially the bigger firms, weren't really looking for lawyers, especially lawyers who were 7 years at bar and hadn't had a lot of practical legal experience. So wasn't a great time for me to be out there saying, hey, you should really hire me. I'm a great candidate. Um, I don't remember a lot from law school, but I'm sure it'll come back to me. It's like riding a bike, right? No, it's not. I mean, I was getting some interviews, but I wasn't a great candidate for some of these lawyer jobs that I always just assumed would be out there waiting for me.
Mhm.
And let's be clear, I assumed that because people told me, oh, they'll always be there. The law will always be there for you.
Yes.
I don't think
Yes.
we'd really seen the recession being there as well. So anyway, what happened was I had a contact who emailed me about a volunteer opportunity. And in her signature line, it said that she did recruiting and employee relations in a law firm.
Hmm.
So I think I'll respond to her. So I just commented, oh, your job sounds very interesting. Here's a little bit about what my background. Turns out they were splitting her role into two. Would I be interested in talking about potentially taking on the employee relations part of her work? And I was. So I ended up working in human resources in a law firm. So that was an
Mhm.
interesting shift, something I hadn't really seen coming.
I want to take a moment. Most people who are watching us don't know you personally, but
Mhm.
Leigh is the ultimate extrovert. She knows everybody. You're going over with her, she's like, "That's such and such. That's such and such." So when she's talking about what everyone tells people to do, it's like most jobs are getting through connection. So it doesn't surprise me at all that she was able to re-enter the workforce after being out for 7 years because she knew somebody. But and she does it naturally. I mean, really briefly. So how did you approach that? Was it, I mean, you said you she was a connection, you kind of knew her. It doesn't sound like she was like a close friend. So was it just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I'll just email her
Yeah.
because this
I
is
never
interesting.
met her in person. We had only traded emails through this volunteer opportunity. So the
Oh,
first time I met her in person was when I went for this job interview.
wow.
And we're still friendly to this day. In fact, I reached out to her recently about another job opportunity. In this case, where I was looking for someone, and she came to mind, and I've wondered if she might be interested. So these are contacts that I keep in mind, and I always keep these professional relationships. So so that was a great experience, just meeting her that way. And then I worked with her for, gosh, 2 years after that. And then she ended up staying home with her small children. So it's kind of the circle of life. um,
Yes, you can advise her
and,
if she
and I
picked
will
up.
say, I went speaking to the women in this group, the women who are mothers as well as professionals. I went back um, part-time initially, and then eventually full-time. So I've been a working mom, I've worked part-time, I've worked full-time, I've been a stay-at-home mom. So these mommy wars, they're very real. Um, and I will tell you that you cannot win. You're gonna be judged no matter what choice you make, and it's stupid. And you just have to tune it all out and remember that if you ever find yourself being the judgy one, to kind of take a step back, because I have been in all of those positions, and they're all hard. They're all hard. You're never going to feel like you're doing well enough at home or at work, and you're always going to be juggling too many balls, and you're always going to drop one and feel like you're a failure. But I can tell you, you're not a failure. Um, and it's just, yeah, it's just a very real thing, that the judgment you get from people. And I feel like, did I just lose you, Lauren? I feel like I might have lost. I feel like I might have lost our host, but I'll keep talking. Um, But one thing I will say is that we've always been told that we can have everything, but sometimes it feels like in society, we haven't necessarily been given the structures to support us as we pursue careers and raise families. So yeah, sometimes it just feels like there's no winning. But but anyway, so yeah, so when I took that job, after staying home for 7 years, it was initially part-time, and then eventually went to full-time. So anyway, I was on my soapbox just about how, as women, sometimes they tell us we can have it all, but we don't necessarily have the structures built into society to support us. So just basically be forgiving to yourself and to others
Yes.
uh, as you
So,
navigate all of that.
so did you, was that job, the first job you took after 7 years, was that initially part-time? Was it like kind of sold to you as part-time or did you request part-time?
Initially, the HR director at the time suggested that I start off part-time and just kind of get back into the swing of things.
Gotcha.
Ramped it up to full-time pretty soon thereafter. It wasn't long that I was in that part-time status. I found part-time really difficult to balance.
Oh,
So mostly because the childcare arrangements were difficult to manage.
oh,
Because if there was ever a shift or an adjustment, everything was out of whack. So it only
yeah.
worked if full-time childcare, but worked part-time. That's the only way my life was manageable. But
Yes,
that's
that
that,
that makes sense.
but that's kind of nice to have if you can afford it. I can't think of
Yes.
part-time jobs that would pay well enough for that. And mine certainly did not. So
Uh, I can't think of any real legal ones. I mean, I
so
guess like OnlyFans or something that's legal. Um, Getting off topic, but hey, I don't judge.
yeah.
So you went to part-time to full-time, and then what happened next? Because you said you stayed at that firm for about 3 more years,
I
and
was
I know you would end up going back to the state. So,
yeah. I really missed public service. I really wanted to be in mission focused work. So found myself going back to the state. And I worked in a state agency there for a short time. Then I was invited to work in an appointed position. So in state government, that just means you're no longer in one of those positions that's protected by statute. I became at will. So I was in one of the at will state government jobs for 6 years.
no.
Uh, and that job was interesting too. So again, another kind of twist in my career path. I had been in HR focused positions where I was kind of leveraging that law degree in compliance type roles. So I was very much focused on employee relations and EEO type work. So very much focused on investigations, ADA compliance in particular, and other discrimination claims. But this one position where I was in the administrative role, the person who was looking to fill it said, I would really love someone with a strong HR background, but who's also worked in law firm administration,
Mhm.
uh, and but who's also worked in state government. And as luck would
They
have
want
it,
you,
yeah. And wouldn't
basically.
it be great if this person was also a lawyer? But where am I going to find someone with that strange, unique background? And as luck would have it, the person that he was saying this to knew me and said, well, I actually know someone who has that exact background. And so that's how I ended up as the director of administration at the Office of the Attorney General, where I served for 6 years. So HR was part of what I did, but I also was over finance, operations, and information technology. And so that was a bit of a challenge only because those were areas where I had not had experience. I'd had some exposure maybe,
Mhm.
but it really strengthened my business acumen. It was a wonderful experience. I got to work with some of the best professionals in state government. And, I had a great team that I was working alongside as well as the career folks at the Office of the Attorney General. And those were probably some of my favorite years professionally. So yeah, that was incredible. And a lot of those folks have been amazing to me since that time. And even as I experienced some professional challenges down the road, I credit one of those people for, I say saving me, because she did. She like helped me and helped me with an opportunity when I felt like I really needed to get out of another job situation. She was one of the people I reached out to and said, do you have some ideas? And she did. So again, it's about kind of remembering some of your colleagues, past and present, and keeping in contact and using those networks as you kind of travel through your career. And that's so important,
So how do
definitely.
you do that? Like, I know you're super busy. How do you, I think most people know how to build a network. How do you maintain your network? I mean, to the point where the three jobs you've talked about so far, it's been through contacts. So how do you maintain that network?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it's just grabbing lunch or coffee with a former colleague and seeing, how they're doing, how life has treated them professionally and personally. Even one of those jobs that I had, gosh, that first job after staying home with my kids, that was 12, 13 years ago.
Hmm.
But I reached out to one of those colleagues recently because I remember that she was very passionate. And this is going to sound funny to people, but she was and still is very passionate about payroll. Um, she wants people to be paid. What can I
I
say?
like it.
But she would pull up this big thing. It's about this big. It's the APA manual. She called it her payroll Bible. Now it's digitized. It's no longer in hard print, but she loved that book. And every time you had a question, she'd say, "Let's check the APA manual," and she'd pull it out. But I had
What
a,
what does APA stand for?
it's like the American Payroll Association or something.
Oh,
I don't
okay, good. That's always gonna be my guess.
but
Like
yeah,
paycheck.
yeah. So she and I had a payroll related question, and I just wanted to pick her brain on it. And I just said, "Hey, do you have a minute? I just want to pick your brain." And I mean, it was an excuse to reach out to an old friend and see how life was treating her, but also to get some of that subject matter expertise that I don't possess. And as I was wrestling with this question, I just kept thinking, what would she do? And then I was like, well, this is stupid. Why don't I just call her? And I think that's really important. And even some of my law school classmates, I try to keep up with them. And I mean, life has been crazy, just kids. I mean, you know how it is. Kids are,
Mhm.
they take up a little bit of your time, but my
Just
kids
a
are getting
little.
older. So for those of you with small kids, like, don't worry. Like, yeah, like you find yourself again, the kids get older, you get bored and you're like, oh wait, I wonder what all my friends are doing. Like they're still out there and they're all wondering what you're doing too. So you'll reconnect. And it was funny, my two best friends from law school, one of us started a group text recently and said, hey, it's been a while, let's get dinner. And I responded, oh, I'm free these dates. And the third one didn't respond. And so the first girl replied again and said, hey, named the girl, what about you? And she said, oh, well, since you said my name, I guess you know who I am. She didn't have our numbers in her phone. And she said,
Huh.
I'm free next Thursday. And we're like, well, don't you want to know who we are first? Maybe you don't
I know
like
it's crazy. She's just gonna show up.
so, but she was like, well, I figured if you know me, you must be okay. And we're like, maybe not. Maybe we're
It's
not. But we laughed so much about that. We're like, don't you want to know who we are first?
oh, so I guess like she got a new phone or something. So it really is like a new phone. Who dis?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'd say just intentionally making that time for some people in your life. And now part of my job is business development. So like having those contacts really is important. But it's really for me, it's I just like people too. I mean, I went into human resources for goodness sake.
Yes.
And part of that is about I've always liked knowing what makes people tick, and I've always wanted to understand human behavior, and that's a big part of I think human resources too. Not just this person misbehaved, but why did they misbehave, and kind of get into that root cause. Is this something that we can repair? And if not, we'll help them move on, but we'll do it in a way that's compliant and that prevents um, further problems for you, the employer, and then also for the employee. So we'll make sure that it's a smooth transition for everyone. Because I'd like to keep keep um, the risk at a minimum, to keep the drama to a minimum, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like with each of your jobs, this twisty turn, you built on previous knowledge. So you had your law degree. Um, I think you went home. I guess technically you did. You were stay at home where learned, super learned time management, organization, at least small budget. So despite what people say, stay at home moms, that's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and there's a lot of transferable skills that you learn. You just have to remember that. So then after you came out of that, you went to private, not private practice. What are you practicing? You were practicing, right?
Well, no, I was doing HR, but in a law
Okay.
firm.
Okay.
So law firm administration, which is kind of its own
Yeah.
uh, niche,
It's a
I would
beast. Yeah. And then
say.
you went to the state and you learned about state administration, government administration, and budgets and all that stuff. And then the next step was payroll. So how did you mentioned reaching out to contacts that you have. Did you do anything else to make sure that you are maintaining what you've learned and upgrading your skill set, your knowledge set, and all that?
Yeah, so when I left the OAG, really the next step there was to take on a role in HR leadership, so the HR
Mm.
director, moving more into that strategic level HR. I mean, I had been doing strategic level work as part of the executive leadership at the OAG, but it wasn't specific to human resources. I mean, that was part of my role, but I was over all of the administrative function. And so as I started looking at the human resources jobs in state government, I was really surprised if I wasn't getting interviews or if I wasn't getting jobs. And I kept thinking, gosh, what am I lacking?
Mm.
Um, and this is an important part of the journey too, because I realized I couldn't just be satisfied with the law degree and my background. The one thing I was really lacking was that designation, that senior professional in human resources designation. I really needed to become certified because a lot of these job postings would say that that was a preferred qualification. And it
Yeah.
occurred to me that I was being screened out for interviews if I didn't have that. So it occurred to me that I really needed to get that. So I decided to study for that and take that test. Um, and it was a very difficult test. It was not easy at all. I couldn't just walk in and assume that because I went to law school and had been working in human resources now for a handful of years that I knew everything there was to know. I had to learn
Mhm.
a lot about, compensation and benefits administration and labor unions, which of course isn't something that we deal with a lot here in Virginia, but it's a big part of this exam. And I didn't know a lot about benefits administration, especially when it comes to compensation packages for executives and the private sector HR management. So I had a lot to learn. There was a lot I did
Mhm.
not know about my field. And so I did not rest on my laurels. I worked really hard to get that designation. Um, and that really put me, I think, in a different category than when I went and applied for those positions. Um,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of when I moved, I think, to the next phase of my career.
That's
Um,
really good advice that if you're not getting the results that you want, reassess or assess if you haven't assessed before, is see what you're missing and how you can get that information. There's so much information out there that
yeah,
there's really no excuse for not getting that knowledge or wow, certification
yeah.
if you need it. So, okay, so you have all this knowledge. Where have you arrived now? What are you doing now? Because now you're out of the government again.
Mhm.
So what's on the Archer Archer?
Yeah. So eventually, after a couple more experiences in state government, I realized I had kind of maxed out in state government. There really wasn't anywhere to go short of running an agency or being a cabinet secretary. And I was not in a position to be in that type of role. And I wasn't really interested in that anyway at that point. So really at that point, I was thinking, consulting seemed like a good next step for me. And again, talking about your contacts and your connection.
Yes.
So I'm sitting at a Starbucks one day. So you got to love these stories, right? And I'm online. I'm just looking for opportunities that are piquing my interest. And
Mm.
and by the way, I'm in a Starbucks in the West End of Richmond. So, and in walks a friend of mine from college who doesn't even live
Told
in
you guys.
the
Told
town.
you.
Uh-huh.
Wherever
And
she goes.
she's a sorority sister. and oh, she's very good friends with our mutual friend Betsy. So she knows
Oh,
Betsy.
okay.
Um, those of you watching who don't know Betsy, so
That's okay.
but
We all know a Betsy.
yeah, yeah. And then she's with her husband, and they're like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just looking for jobs, just thinking maybe it's time to move on." And her husband says, "Well, have you ever thought about consulting?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think about it all the time, but I wouldn't even know where to start." And he
Think about
says,
it all the time.
"Yeah." And he says, "Oh, well, I work for a great consulting firm. Let me get you in touch with them." So I ended up having this great conversation with Fahrenheit advisors. At the time, they were not necessarily looking for, full-time consultants, but I was able to sign up with them to be, they do have some folks who do just kind of ad hoc consulting when needed, when they need to
Yeah.
ramp up their capabilities. So I was able to do that for a time. Um, and then I've been working with them now, gosh, going on a year, and was able to take that on full time recently. And I have loved that. I think in a lot of ways, it kind of tickles that lawyer part of my brain. Don't give
Mm.
legal advice, asterisk. um, I'm not I'm not committing any ethical violations, but in the sense that I am able to provide guidance to clients on best
Mm.
practices. Um, and so I really enjoy that, being able to provide subject matter expertise, short of legal advice, so more business advisory.
Mm.
And then at some point there is, a handoff to attorneys if something ever does step into that legal space. And because the work that we do in human resources is so closely tied to the compliance space, we're good, I think, partners to labor and employment attorneys. So if a labor and employment attorney has a client who has a need, and they maybe the attorney cannot do it for whatever reason, maybe they're just too busy, or investigations, for example, your attorney cannot do that for you.
Mm.
Then they would have to be a witness if it ever went to court. So they always have to refer investigations out. They can always refer that to us at Fahrenheit, and then we can do that investigation. We're very knowledgeable, and we'll do it in a legally compliant way, understanding the nuanced communication that's required and the legal implications of that investigation. And then we're going to hand it back to you. Or we can, write or draft policies for you, or provide thoughtful guidance on employee discipline or performance management. And again, if it does reach legal issues, we'll hand it back to you for that legal advice. So we can be good business partners to those attorneys, because we understand that legal piece. I think once upon a time, HR was really thought of as very transactional. We just key stuff into a system like, oh, new employee. Or we were the party planners. I mean, we all have seen The Office, right?
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, I've seen clips. I haven't actually watched a whole episode.
it's
I know.
but yeah, the party planning committee is where all the drama happens. Okay, so
Oh,
there's a lot of
I mean,
drama.
I've been on party committee, so yes, I've been in an office.
let me tell you, you do not want me to plan your parties. I'm not good at it. And I've worked for people who wanted me to plan parties. And I'm like, no, like I did not go, like, no offense. People who plan parties, they're amazing. It's a special skill set. I am not
Yes.
at all demeaning party planners. I am saying it's not this. I am not a party
I ain't
planner.
the one.
No, those people are amazing. Like I've been to parties,
Yes.
I'm like, who thought about this? This is incredible. It's not me. I'm
My
just
one of
not
my
her.
friends who's also an attorney, she's amazing at party planning. She
Yeah.
did my baby shower. So yeah, not me. I mean, I try. I'm really good at setting out food and booze. That's my
Yeah.
specialty.
Someone can assign me a task and I'll do it, but planning
Yeah.
it, ooh, I'm the worst. But you want me to do an investigation for you or tell you how to manage an employee who's underperforming all day long, call me. If you want to try to get at the heart of why someone's struggling or managing an ADA compliance issue, or you want me to look at your job descriptions, I would love to. But do not ask me to plan your parties.
Or you can
Unless,
ask. The answer is no.
yeah, or I'll do it, but it will not be a fun party.
It will not be good.
We're
No.
gonna order pizza and probably play a board game. But I
That's
don't.
like a third grade party.
Now an event that I can plan for you would be something like an engagement thing, or like something having to do with HR and training. But yeah, no. But yeah, so HR's changed over the years from something that's very transactional to something that is very strategic. And I think that's where we bring value. And I think I've just been really lucky that that change in what HR is has sort of corresponded with my career path. So, um, and I'm really lucky that it kind of just worked out that way, because I didn't start my career saying, I can't wait to be an HR professional.
Some
Um,
people do. I mean, I
yeah.
didn't. I focused on corporate and securities law.
Oh,
Not doing that now, obviously. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Well, you might have
So
enjoyed that securities fraud case that I was a part of back in a while ago,
yeah, it was
a couple of years
yeah.
ago.
Yeah. Um, so what are some final words of wisdom? I know you said earlier you don't have wisdom. She has tons of wisdom. I don't know why she's selling herself short.
Well,
But what are some tips, tricks?
yeah, I didn't when I was 25. I was,
I'm sure you did. It was just very narrow. It's much broader and deeper now. So what's some of if someone came to you and they're like, what should I do? My career has taken all these twists and turns and I'm trying to figure out what to do next. How
yeah.
did you do it? What did you do?
Um,
I mean, you would tell them what you just told us, but what tips would you give them?
yeah. I mean, I would probably say, well, I have a really good friend who's a career coach. You should consider calling her, and she might help bring clarity to some of the things you're struggling with. And
She's talking
then,
about me, guys.
yeah. But then I might also suggest, that, well, I mean, I, first of all, I don't think it's normal for people necessarily to start off on one career path and stay on it. That's not the
Right.
norm anymore. And so I would say, so first of all, you're in good company, and it's totally fine if you decide you want to jump off this track and try something new, and to maybe start making a plan. Like if that is something you want to try, let's start thinking about a plan and what can I do to help, and then maybe just share some of my experiences, and talking about that professional network. Who do you know that does something that's interesting to you? Why don't you just go sit down and talk to that person about how did they get here?
Mhm.
um, because not only is that person going to tell you a story that's interesting, but they might be willing to help you, or give
Yeah.
you an opportunity that you didn't know was even available to you. So there's that. But yeah, because we've talked a lot about using those contacts to help
Yeah.
you. That's kind of what got me where I am, was kind of leveraging um, those connections, people who took chances on me. Um, and I will say, I think showing gratitude to those people is also important.
Yeah.
Uh, Recently, I sent a message to that attorney in my hometown who let me work for him for that 1 year before I went to law school, the one who inspired me to try labor and employment law. And I just wanted to thank him for kind of setting me on this path. Even though I've had a little bit of a love-hate relationship with my career path, I'm not going to lie. There have been days where I'm like, why am I doing this? And other days where I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm so lucky I get to do this.
Meaning you're completely normal.
Yeah. And I will say, one lawyer that I was working with at the OAG, there was one day he came back from a hearing and I asked him, hey, how did it go? And
Mhm.
he was pouring a cup of coffee. And I swear he was jumping up and down. He wasn't, but that was like the feeling I was getting. And he said, I can't believe I get paid to do this. And I thought, wow, I wish I felt that way about my job. But like that stuck with me about like that's how I need to answer when people ask me about my work. Like that needs to be my answer every time. And if I don't feel that way about what I'm doing, then I need to be looking.
Yeah.
So I loved the joy he had for it. And let me tell you, he wasn't getting paid the big bucks, that's for sure. We're in state
He's
government.
not getting paid a lot. He just said, I can't believe I'm getting paid.
Yeah, yeah, because we were in state government. And by the way, he had left a big firm to come do what he was doing.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, so he was doing it because he loved it, not because he wasn't motivated by money. Let's put it that way. Um, and that says a lot. And I think that's important too for folks who are kind of struggling with what they're doing. Like, what is it that's going to make you happy?
Mhm.
Um, and just, personally, what I'll say, because I know we're limited on time, but over the last, and you know this about me, Lauren, over the last 12 to 18 months, I've had to do a lot of soul searching about what makes me happy.
Mhm.
Um, and I've had to make a lot of changes because I realized that a lot of the things that were making me unhappy personally and professionally were man-made problems. And when I say man-made, I mean human-made.
Yeah.
Um, and I was thinking, if these are human-made problems, these are things I don't have to live with. And these are things that I can change. Isn't that
Very
interesting?
true.
Um, and once you realize that, it's like, oh wait, why am I doing this then? Like, I don't have to keep fighting all these problems that are not even necessary in life. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I'm not going to go off the grid or anything crazy, but seriously, there's so many problems that can be eliminated.
Right.
Just make different choices.
Yeah. I mean, I think people give too much power away to others instead of saying, okay, what can I change and focus on that? Because you
Yeah,
can't necessarily change others, but you can focus on yourself and what you have control over and what you can change.
yeah.
Um,
I
so if
mean,
people want to learn more about you, about Fahrenheit, where should they go?
right. So definitely check out Fahrenheit's website. It's an advisory firm here in Richmond, but we serve the entire country. It's started off as a financial or like a financial consulting advisory firm, but has since broadened its services. Um, Always evolving. Fahrenheit is such a dynamic, exciting place. Every time I set foot over there, I'm inspired. I'm like, I should come to work like on site every day because it really is just an exciting, dynamic place. Always trying new things and learning about new areas. Right now, they're working on, I say we're working on exciting projects out in the 757 and ways to help grow that area economically. We do a lot giving back to the community and partner with a lot of amazing nonprofits and try to give attention to those nonprofits as well. Um, and we have a partnership with VCU. So you'll see Rodney the Ram a lot
Is that
hanging.
his name? I never knew that. It makes sense, I guess.
I think that's right. I should know. I should know. But
I,
yeah, um, yeah. And just we have amazing clients. I've loved the clients I work with. They have really stretched me professionally. I've learned a
Mhm.
lot. And when I partner with some of my colleagues, like we learn and grow from each other so much. And so that's been great too. One of the things that we're really proud of at Fahrenheit is we call it our deep bench of expertise because, if I'm working on something and my client has a question about compensation, and, I know a little bit about compensation, but if they want to get in the weeds, I pick up the phone and I call my colleague Merriman because that's her specialty. And I'll say,
Mhm.
hey, what do you think about this? Or I'll call, I have a colleague, Emily, where employee engagement is her passion area. And I'll call her and say, hey, I have this client who really wants to do some work in engagement. What do you think about this? And so, we really like to consult with each other. And that's another thing too, where I was working in HR leadership, sometimes that can be lonely.
Yeah.
Um, and I felt that in some of my last roles in state government, where I felt very lonely and almost yeah, I guess lonely is the right word, and I'll just leave it at that because there's a lot I could say. but
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't feel that. I have a great group of colleagues, and the clients we work with are really amazing. So
So, what's the website for Fahrenheit?
oh, I think it's FahrenheitAdvisors.com.
Okay, FahrenheitAdvisors.com. I mean, if not, you can just look up Fahrenheit
Mhm.
Advisors on Google or Bing or whatever, Chrome. I don't know.
Yeah, they have yeah, so private equity, marketing, human capital, executive search, finance and accounting, fractional support. So if you're a small business and you just need someone to kind of plug in for your finance, accounting, bookkeeping, HR, we can assist. Or if you need someone to come in and do an assessment of your services, we can do that too. Investigations, like I said, we do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna put it out there. People can connect with you on LinkedIn too, since
Oh, yeah.
that's where they're
Find
probably
me on
seeing this.
Leigh Archer, and it's Leigh. So
Yeah, it's on the bottom. And Archer, like the character, but she came first. So, thank you so much for joining us today,
oh, thank you
both
so much
to
for having
Leigh and also to anyone who's watching. And let me just check. I know the next Tyche Talk's in 2 weeks. I just want to make sure I get the date right. So it's August 20th at 3 o'clock Eastern time. And we're going to be talking with Stacy McAlpine about how to choose your priorities. And that's going to be really interesting because I know we all have like, I have so much stuff to do. How do I prioritize? Um, and so I hope to see you guys there. I'll see you in 2 weeks at 3 o'clock to help figure out how to um, choose your priorities, how to pick which ones. If you still have questions with Leigh, if you're watching this later, you can just connect with her directly and ask her if you just want to say hi. Tell them Tyche sent you. So,
Yeah, send me
all
a
right, guys. Sorry?
I said send me a message.
Send her a message. Um, so yeah, see you guys in a fortnight. Oh, I'll end it with my really bad British accent. I'll say you in a fortnight.
In
Well,
a
I don't
fortnight.
even think that's, yeah, I'll just say UK. I'm sure that's somewhere. I don't know, Irish maybe. I don't know. Anyway,
British.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye. Thank you.